Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. Well, your intrepid political reporter, Podcast by George, is back out there on the campaign trail. I was at Papa Kino's Pizza, believe it or not, in the Drake University area. It's right across the street from Lefty's, the music venue in the city. Down there seeing a debut, really, by Matt Woods, who's been on a podcast by George. He's fronting a new band, new three-piece down there. And like they say, you can't swing a cat in this political season. Without swing a dead cat without hitting a politician, it seems like, in the state of Iowa. That'll be true right up until the Iowa caucuses. And I mean, literally, right across the street, here's Kirsten Gillibrand. So, recorder in hand, I go over there to catch a couple of comments from her. And want to start off just by giving a little background, a little bio on Kirsten Gillibrand, because a lot of people are just starting to hear about her as these campaigns point towards 2020 Iowa caucuses. Now, this is from Ballotpedia, the website, and this is what it says about Kirsten Gillibrand. She's a Democratic member of the U.S. Senate from New York. She launched an exploratory committee on January 15th, 2019, formally declared her candidacy on March 17th, 2019, so not that long ago. Gillibrand has focused her campaign on economic and social issues, including addressing sexual assault in the military, health care for 9/11 first responders, increasing transparency in politics, Medicare for all, and universal paid family leave. Prior to serving in the U.S. Senate, Gillibrand worked as an attorney, law clerk, campaign staffer, and special counsel for the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. She also represented New York's 20th Congressional District in the U.S. House from 2007 to 2009. And she's not making a big deal about it, but she's particularly aligned with Hillary Clinton. The Senate seat that she holds was actually vacated by Hillary Clinton when she went to become Secretary of State under Barack Obama. And she's been serving as the senator from New York since then. She also worked on the Clinton campaign, and that's kind of what got my radar up, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to ask a question of her here in the state of Iowa about the connection to Hillary Clinton and the effort to elect the first woman president, which a lot of people in Iowa, a lot of women particularly, were sorely disappointed when they weren't able to do that in 2016. But let's pick up some comments now from Papa Kino's Pizza, and it's noisy in there, and it's a small venue, and the place is packed, and I think that's all by design, not by accident. They want to put these candidates in these frenetic situations in very small rooms that are packed to overflowing to give this sense of intimacy and urgency. And so apologize a little bit for the audio quality, but it'll get a little better when Podcast by George gets a chance to question her directly here right at the end of these comments. So here's Kirsten Gillibrand talking about why she's uniquely qualified to beat Donald Trump.
I will be campaigning everywhere in Iowa and everywhere in the United States because my record is so different than any other candidate that's running. Not only did I win a 2-1 Republican district twice, the last time by a 24-point margin, but then brought together my whole state, the red parts, the blue parts, and the purple places, to actually have the highest vote total in the history of the state at 72%. So I think my path to become the nominee and to defeat President Trump is very different, and it will go through every rural place, every red place, every blue place, and every purple place, as I've always done in my state, which has 20 million people. So while I think it'll be a marathon and not a sprint, I feel like I am built for this marathon, and I feel very called to this moment and have the unique qualifications to actually defeat President Trump.
And as you may have heard, Congress is trying to work out some financial assistance that would help those folks out in western Iowa that have been affected by that devastating flooding out there. And Gillibrand has toured the area and met with officials out there, and she's assuring them that it's just a political battle and that Mitch McConnell has a good bill that he can put on the floor, but he won't do it. It's being withheld. Everything's being held up. There's a filibuster also, but it all has to do with wanting to aid and assist Puerto Rico, and I think also the state of California, as well as the states of Iowa and Nebraska affected by this flooding. And as she toured western Iowa, what's happening out there on the ground, a lot of the people that have been impacted by the flooding are blaming the Army Corps of Engineers for what's happened. It's kind of short-sighted, but it is immediate. They believe that the flooding wouldn't be as bad as it is right now if the Corps had done more, if the government had done more to protect their interests and protect them from this horrible flooding. And Gillibrand responded specifically to that.
So I have grave concerns about how we have handled flood prevention in Iowa and around the country. The real challenges are Iowa has gone through droughts and floods cyclically for a long time. The last major flood was in 2011, and we did not do the things that should have been done for Iowans between 2011 and today. The Army Corps of Engineers had laid out projects, $1 billion of authorized projects that have not been funded over the last couple of years, which would have prevented the level of destruction and devastation that took place. So I was very frustrated with the testimony of the Army Corps of Engineers in terms of how they are prioritizing the work, and very concerned that OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, has a formula to decide when projects get funded that harms rural America. So I got an agreement with the senators who were at the hearing with me to work with me on changing the law to make sure when we do have threats of flooding, we can actually put in permanent measures to prevent future loss and future destruction.
Okay, so as you can imagine, this is when Podcast by George had to jump in there because, as you know, climate change is top of line. It's top of mind. It's really important on Podcast by George. And the point is, the threat of flooding that she talks about, it is forever, folks. It ain't never going away. She's reaching back to 2011 and things that weren't done at that time with the last major flooding, although I'm not sure how they qualify that, but terrible flooding out there in 2011, and the fact that nothing was done basically because short-term short-sightedness. We saved some money, we cut some taxes, we gave some benefits to some rich folks, but the Army Corps of Engineers didn't get money for their projects, apparently. They didn't get levees built, they didn't make preparations, and now they're awash out there in this unprecedented flooding. And that's the immediate problem. But that's dealing with the trees while the forest is awaiting climate change. And that's what I asked her about. So that's 7 or 8 years ago in 2011, 7 or 8 years from now.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like in that river basin? And is climate change something that has to be addressed between now and then?
It has to be urgently addressed because the truth is, with global climate change, you are getting severe weather events. This massive flooding is happening more frequently with a greater intensity than ever before. It's happened in my state with 100-year floods that are now happening every 2 or 3 years. It's really that severe. People are dying. Businesses are being destroyed. Farms are being destroyed. People are being displaced. So the truth is, we need to take global climate change head on. And for me, it's such an opportunity. The 3 main ideas on the Green New Deal are all bipartisan. Infrastructure money, we're all for roads, bridges, sewers, high-speed rail, rural broadband, new electric grid, more mass transit. We all support it. Clean air, clean water, which would be so helpful for Iowa. Iowans don't like the fact there's a lot of nitrates in their water, so why wouldn't you spend the money to give them the resources they need to get it out? And third, green jobs. We talked today with a bunch of young people about why they should have access to STEM training so they can be the inventors and entrepreneurs to find out how to make more renewable fuels and more energy efficient products. They'll invent the future. They are the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. You give them a challenge of net zero carbon emissions in 10 years, Americans will rise to that challenge. They will want to out-invent and out-compete China and any other nation in the world on a space race for green energy. So I think we can do it. I would also put a price on carbon, because if you can use market forces to help you, giving lower tax rates to innovators and higher tax rates to polluters, you'll get there even faster.
Kirsten Gillibrand talking to a podcast by George near Drake University in a driving thunderstorm. Big-time rain outside during her presentation, but it was fine inside. And she's very well-spoken, very articulate, very passionate, very energetic. And you'll be well-served if you go to one of her political stops and listen to Kirsten Gillibrand. One thing that struck me listening to her, she's definitely taking up the mantle of women and girls and possible history making by electing a woman president. which was a big part, like it or not, of the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, it didn't work so well for Hillary, and there's a lot of people in Iowa that are very disappointed about that. The question that I wanted to ask her, and I'm not so sure that I really got at it, and I didn't have time to follow up with her to get the response that I was looking for, but the point that I wanted to make with her, and I think this is not really discussed enough in American politics. True, there's a huge political divide across this country between Republicans and Democrats. But I'll tell you something else. In the state of Iowa, the memories of the 2016 election are very fresh. And there's a huge political division still in the Democratic Party between those that supported Hillary and those that supported Bernie Sanders in the run-up to the Iowa caucuses and afterwards in the state of Iowa. Those people still aren't exactly seeing each other eye to eye. Hillary supporters believe that the progressive insurgency of Bernie Sanders cost them a chance to elect the first woman president in Hillary Clinton. And the progressives, the people on the left, and there is some evidence of this, folks, believe that the system was rigged, that Bernie really never had a chance. Now, I got to say this also. I think a lot of people could have told Bernie that when he got into the Democratic Party and ran that way. But it looks like the Democrats were always going to nominate a Democrat. And those old-line Democrats, those people running the party, didn't view Bernie as a Democrat. They viewed him as an independent that was jumping in to try to get elected, to try to prevent from being a Ralph Nader by running as a Democrat. Hillary had 500 superdelegates on her side before the first caucus vote was ever cast in the state of Iowa. And in the run-up to that, if you'll recall, there were a lot of people saying, forget about it, it's over with. She's going to win it. Now, it appears there was some things going on, kind of things that were borderline fair, and that's more than fair is a way to put it. They prevented Bernie from getting what probably should have been rightfully his win in the Iowa caucuses, and maybe the nomination of the Democratic Party. But anyway, the point is that's all very fresh in everyone's mind. So here comes Kirsten Gillibrand carrying the flag of Hillary Clinton, trying to become the first woman president. And in the state of Iowa, I hope she understands this deep divisiveness that still exists. And so I wanted to ask her a question that I tried to get at that, but it really wasn't fully developed, and it kind of just turned into a standard campaign response. But here it is. Millions of Democratic voters here in Iowa kind of lost their chance of getting a woman elected in 2016, and they were beaten by the Electoral College, and they felt let down by the Clinton campaign. How do you look at that? How do you speak to those people and say this is a second chance now, and they need to get on board once again?
Well, I think Iowans need to pick the candidate that's going to represent their values the most. I believe I am that candidate. I'm somebody who understands the economy here. I've been on the Ag Committee for 12 years. I understand rural America and manufacturing. I've been on the Armed Services Committee for 12 years. And I understand rural water issues because I've been on the Environment and Public Works Committee that does infrastructure and water. And so I know that I can be a voice for Iowans and all of America because I'm a voice for all New Yorkers. And our economy is as diverse as any state. We've got the downstate, New York City, big populations and inner city issues, but then we got small cities in upstate, we've got rural areas in upstate, and we've got suburbs in Westchester and Long Island. So I know I can do this, and I know I can represent Iowans the best.
So with that, it was off to get some more selfies and press some more flesh and meet with what she hopes are some more supporters for Kirsten Gillibrand in 2020. And that's, just the latest. I'm going to try to get all of these candidates, or get most of them on anyway, and get a question or two that are from the unique perspective, the Midwestern perspective, the real-world perspective of Podcast by George. So follow along, and if you get a chance, get out there and talk to these folks and be your own journalist. Ask your own questions, because this is a great opportunity to do that and try to figure out what in the hell is going on in this country and with American politics. So thanks for listening. Dial us up on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. You can listen to us along with your favorite music on Spotify. We're on the iHeartRadio app, Google Play. There's just so many places to check out Podcast by George, and I really hope that you do. But for now, thanks for listening, and that's another Podcast by George.